All right, you are listening to the Shuttlecock podcast. My name is Aaron Rhodes. We are sponsored by the Vinyl Underground at 7th Heaven, offering new and used vinyl at 76 and Troost in Kansas City, Missouri. This week on the show, we have Fally Afani from iHeart Local Music.
Howdy.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well.
Nice.
So yeah, you've been doing... Okay, I might not have the exact right amount of time, but you've been doing iHeart Local Music since 2011? Or is it
a little
predate
longer?
that?
It used to be a live journal, and then it was hosted on some other sites. And so unofficially, probably since 01 or 2.
Oh, wow.
And then, on the books, probably 2011. So
When you made the jump to WordPress.
yes.
Yeah.
For tax purposes, let's say 2011.
2011. What different kind of like forms? What was it more of like? Did the content of the website and like the way you covered things really change around then?
No, just other than gear changing throughout the years. And so it was always kind of interviews, show coverage, previews, debuting tracks, kind of things like that. Some normal run-of-the-mill journalism. So.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess you were in kind of the era of the MP3 blog for a minute, and did you kind of take that on, or?
When there was a time when, Twitter was new and social media was new. And so that was a really big help. And then slowly social media kind of limited what an audience could see. So we had to do things differently. But most of our users come to the site every day to check stuff out. And most of them are people who are older, who don't go to shows, but still want to know what happens at shows. And so when we throw a show, to market to a completely different audience, and we just have, and that's how it is. When we throw a show, whether we have a story up, take part in a festival, all these things have different little audiences. So we got everyone covered.
Oh yeah, and I guess just to take a second to gripe between the two of us, Facebook, posting stuff on Facebook, that's just a hassle right now.
It's
just
helpful, but
That's I think it's still where most of my audience comes from, even though it's just so limited at this point.
The more we cater to a Facebook audience, the less it benefits bands. The less it connects people directly to a band, and that didn't used to be the case, but it's just different. If we were in KC, it would be a little different. But since we're in Lawrence, it's not the same as if we were in KC. So we had to make sure that people were not relying on Facebook to get music news.
Yeah. But, so you've been in the game for some time.
I've been in media relating to music since the 90s. Because back in the 90s, you could work when you were 15 and nobody cared. So you could employ a 15-year-old. So I worked in radio.
Shout out to questionable labor laws.
I mean, it was within 3 years of me immigrating over to the U.S. for good, and then job, and that was it. So, but I also, to be fair, had 5 jobs at once as a teenager. Yeah. So.
Oh yeah, and where's your family from again?
I have one parent from Kansas and one from the Middle East, and it's from a country that nobody likes, so I kind of keep it on the down low.
Gotcha.
But if you know me, it's obvious. So.
Yeah. But so you were going to KU once you moved over?
No, I was in starting high school, junior high-ish time. So we lived overseas, and then during the Gulf War, we had to leave. Kind of middle of the night. And so it was very different. And so we were back and forth we kept thinking we could go back, and it was never the same. And so we just came here permanently in 95. And that was good because, it's nice to be near family. And we went from a very big, bustling city in the Middle East to nowhere, Kansas, a very small town where there was no media. There's barely any TV. The radio, had nothing. This is before the internet. And so we had to, if I wanted music, I had to rely on House of Sight and Sound, which was a really good record store in the city next door, which was Salina. And then I remember when Amazon was new, mailing them an envelope full of money and coins and getting records back. Yeah. And so very sheltered, life from media in, the U.S. But for some reason in the Middle East, where everything's censored, had access to more, which is a little strange to me. But now this is what I work in full time because I love it and nobody can stop me.
But I think maybe I'm just misremembering, but like I thought you'd told me before also that you ended up just getting a lot of CDs and stuff from like the library too, or
No. I mean, eventually, no. I mean, like I bought a lot of CDs and then I worked in radio stations, and so we had access to a lot of music there. But we could get a lot of music from the library in Lawrence, but that wasn't until that was a little recently.
Yeah.
So.
No, and I guess that was definitely like an enticing part of working in music media, like super internet era, just because it was a lot easier to get your hands on like CDs and like even like I don't know just lots of different types of music media, just because like they entrusted you with like, oh, you're gonna review it, we'll send that to you. And
we people kind of think that working in radio was just sitting around listening to music all day, and it was so much fun. But then like radio took a huge nosedive, and now when people kind of send us albums for review, we're like hold on to your physical copies, just send us the digital ones and we can review it that way. Don't worry about sending us something physical, keep it for yourself.
Yeah.
And so which really throws some people for a loop. I'm like, no, you should keep that, it's fine, we'll do fine with just digital, but unless you have something special like in the physical package that needs to be seen. So but yeah, I don't know, people still like having something physical to hold on to, and that really hasn't changed too much, so that's good. And a lot of people we talk to, like, that's still really important. Like, you can do a lot as a musician digitally, but it seems like having something physical still means you've made it. Like, you've become bigger. That makes sense.
I think it just, like, for a lot of people, it just shows, like, how serious you are about, like, the art that you're making, like, that you're willing to put in, like, the effort and the money and everything into, like, making sure there's physical copies. And, like, I don't know, I think, like, it just kind of shows to me that you really kind of believe in your work to some extent. And I don't know if you feel that way about it, but
yeah, and it's nice because musicians and people who go to shows tell me, like, it's leaving them with something to remember you by, and so you have it. So
cool. And so were you at KJHK when you were at?
Yeah, I was at KJHK, and it was interesting because when I'd worked in commercial radio before going to KJHK, and so when I showed up to apply, there were men there who didn't let me pick up an application. It was like a guarded boys club. And then a friend of mine named Meredith, who is a DJ now, has DJed in New York, Seattle, like all sorts of places, and in Lawrence sometimes. She became like the station manager and just like destroyed that boys club and made it really open. And so when a lot of us were working there, it went really well. I was production director for a long time, for a couple of years there, which by college standards, that's a long time. And so it went really well. We went to some conference in New York City, and we got there and we unpacked and we heard a commotion, and we're like, what's going on? And we opened our windows, and the Iraq War had been declared. And I had just like finished getting over the first Iraq War, which I lived through. And so I was like, why is this happening again? I don't understand. And so we were all kind of protesting in the streets at night, but doing college radio things by day. And that was a really unique bonding experience for us. And then we came back to Kansas, and all hell broke loose, and everybody went and fought overseas, and that was a shit show. So
that sounds like the ideal liberal arts experience, though.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. But things like that couldn't have happened if we didn't have such a tight bond in the crew. So. But overall, like, the experience was really well. This was back in like from 2001 to 3-ish era. I can't remember the exact years, and there were so many shows, and that's when live music was really popular in shows like Pink House, Pirate House, all these house venues, and then it started transitioning more to like venues like the Replay, and the Granada always had good shows, and so it was like this wonderful time for live music. And so I started interning at Lawrence.com, and Phil Cawthon, who started Lawrence.com at that time, kind of like showed me how to talk to musicians and, talk to them like they were human beings and people, which a lot of journalists don't do very well. So that was, and then I went and worked in TV for a while and came back with like really intense journalism training, but always kind of kept this up on the side. Yeah. And now this is my main gig.
And, but yeah, have you, just on the subject of KJHK, have you kind of kept good track of them over the years and kind of watched how the station has changed since you've been there?
And, a lot of people like to complain and say well, in my day it was like this. It's it's not for you. Yeah. It's for them. It's that generation. It's their thing now. And so, but we don't work with them a lot. It's their thing. That's different. When I was there, it was 60 people on staff. You have one meeting a week. Now it's way more. It's, I don't know, maybe 200 or something like that. And they have meetings all the damn time. And I don't know what they do because all I hear from people who work there is how busy they are with meetings. And, occasionally there's things like Farmers Ball and there's, and they're on events every now and then, but I don't see them because we're operating in different scenes. Yeah. And we've done shows and coverage catered towards the college crowd, and it's gone fine, but it's not worth the time and money because they have... people my age will complain that, the kids don't care and they're not going to shows. I see it as they have way more horrible things on their plate than we did at their age. The tuition is outstanding and insane, and they have a lot more to deal with in school, and everything's horrible, and the economy looks like crap, and it's just harder. When I was in school, I had 3 jobs, and that paid for everything, and I graduated with no debt. You can't do that now. So I'm not going to get mad and blame them for anything with live music. They get out when they can and do and have fun, but I'm not part of that crowd that gets really angry at the young crowd about how they treat live music. They have way harder things to deal with than we did at age. So they need to be cut some slack. Yeah.
And have you enjoyed? I know you cover Farmers Ball pretty often.
No, I don't. We have never once covered Farmers Ball.
Oh, really?
Nope.
Okay. Must be just some of the bands that play it. You end up covering.
And they're kind of bands that are active and we cover them anyway. But we have never once covered Farmers Ball. I don't like contests because I feel bad. They're all good, and I just and most of the time they're very good natured. They're all happy for each other. But you just I want everybody to be covered and feeling good about themselves. So I don't like contests very much. Yeah,
I guess that'll lead well into another question I had, which was and this is I feel like a lot of people I know kind of talk about this when they talk about your site, but I don't know if I have read a real negative review that you've written. Maybe they're out there and I just haven't seen them.
We did once. We ripped apart a band that ended up being one of our favorite bands.
Yeah. What band was that?
And it was because they unknowingly kind of did something that was my one. I hate clowns. I don't like clowns. I don't like colorophobia. And a band, they all dressed as clowns, and I didn't know it was a gimmick. And they kind of emailed me and said hey, we actually dress something different every show. That day we just dressed as clowns. Yeah. You should come out again. It was Dean Monkey and the Dropouts. So I'm glad that they messaged me because I was just I can't do the clown thing. It's not my thing. But it's not that we're nice to every band. There are a lot of bands that are shit and we don't like. We just don't think they deserve the time of day.
Yep.
There are a lot of bands that are terrible and are filled with terrible people, and they are doing nothing for our scene, and they are damaging, or they're horrible, and they're full of abusers. I don't want anything to do with them. And if that's the case, they don't deserve time on a website. Yeah. I'm going to give that space and time to someone who works really hard and cares about their music and their fans and works hard to build up their music scene. If someone's shitty, I'm not going to spend time tearing them down.
Yeah.
So I get 50 emails a day. I don't have time to tear someone down. If they're shitty, they're not even worth me thinking about for a single minute in my day.
Yeah.
So that sounds meaner, doesn't it? But they're out there. There's a lot of crap, but I'm not going to.
But if they end up on a show that you're at, you usually just don't mention them even.
Yeah. So that's not true because sometimes we'll go just to cover one band.
Yeah.
And people on the rest of the lineup will be like, "What was wrong with us? Why'd you do that?" And it was it can be anything. Usually it's because we just wanted to profile this one band. Yeah. But there have been other times where. Maybe the other band played really shitty, and I know they don't normally play shitty, and so we just pack up the camera, we shut it off, and we leave. I'm not going to publish a story about somebody being shitty, one time I covered a band that was good, but my photos were terrible. I just didn't get a single nice shot of someone. It was like eyes half closed. I tried really hard, and I was being distracting at that point, so I just gave up. I was like, let them have a nice show. Don't let me get in the way. And usually, like, we'll talk about it after, like, hey, I liked your show. Sorry, I won't have anything because my photos were terrible. I don't like it when someone comes and publicly posts a comment like, yeah, why did you cover only this act? Boo. It's like, well, now you're tearing down the other act that was on the bill. Like, don't make them feel bad. That's nasty. So I also, one time, I went to a show, and I was just there for fun. And somebody was playing a song that I thought was really great. So I covered them, and I left. And I left because I was pregnant, and I had really severe morning sickness. And so the other act on the show that I didn't get to see sent a series of really angry emails, like threatening, harassing emails, like just very, very mad.
Like why didn't you stay and throw up on me?
My mother is wondering where these photos are, and how dare you? And you're only in this for fashion. And and I told them, like, hey, nobody knows this yet, but I'm pregnant. And I have really bad mornings, and they still just so they kept throwing out the term, like, why are you just doing this for fashion? And so I started, I'm starting a fashion segment on the site just because it pissed them off so bad. So it's like, well, if you insist, I'm really in this for fashion.
Not their fault you're stylish.
Yeah, fashion and music go hand in hand. And so it's good to have bands that have style, and that's the broad definition. You can have different types of style. So I believe a band should have some sort of fashion, that they're both artistry that go hand in hand. It helps out a lot. But I'm not going to hold it against someone if they don't have any specific decided style. So even like sneakers and jeans, that's a style. Like, that's a broad definition, keeping that very open on purpose. But that's the only reason why we would cover like maybe one person just to focus on one act. And also sometimes the rest of the acts on the bill are bands we've covered a lot. And if you cover someone too much, you will inadvertently make the audience hate them. I remember other journalists who used to cover the same 5 bands that their friends were in, like, over and over again, and the town just hated them. And it wasn't the band's fault. It was because the journalist in town was only covering the same 5 acts. So that's irresponsible journalism at that point.
And so I guess we got that part out of the way, but I guess I also wanted to just talk to you about I don't know, some of the more memorable early moments after you started the site. I don't know. I guess I just want to know, at least first, what was your real intention and goal when the first days of the website?
So my real intention and goal, it was very clear, and that was to get people to focus on bands that were not getting any attention. So I went to this show once, and it was like a fundraiser for something, might have been for Haiti when the earthquake hit or something. And there was a band at the time called Cowboy Indian Bear, and I didn't know anybody in the band. And Caitlin Conroy wasn't even in the band at that point. She would come and guest on a couple of songs, and I thought wow, these guys are really great. This is a good band. And then there was also another band the Noise FM, and I'd see them other shows, and nobody was there. This is way early in their career, and I knew some of them from prior projects. I knew Marty was in the Sister Maria, I think is what it's called. I'm not entirely sure. I can't remember.
Solo thing.
Yeah, and I remember that because I love electronic music. That's my favorite, and so I remember that from back in the day. And I thought Caitlin had the most beautiful voice in town. And I was like, why isn't anybody watching this band? And I'd get so mad, and so I started doing this. And, in journalism, you report just the facts. You leave your opinion out of it. And so everything I did was reporting the facts, hey, this is what a show looked like. We weren't really into previewing shows because bands play so often every other week in Lawrence, or every week sometimes if they're really active. And so we'd say, hey, this is what it looked like. This is what you missed. This is what happened. They're going to play again. Go see them again. This is what it'll look like. If this is what you like, go see it. And so we also were covering a lot of genres that we didn't know anything about and had no business in, just to show people this exists, go see it. Yeah. And so, when I was in college, hip hop was going really great and strong, and they'd have not just good hip hop shows, but like B-boy battles, and the Wax Clash DJ battle was one I really liked. And then like it just dropped, it disappeared just because there was scene turnover. And then like Bear Club was kind of doing a good job at maintaining a presence, but like nobody was going out. And so, and now like, you know, hip hop is really great in Topeka, Lawrence, and Kansas City, just fantastic.
Yep.
And I get really irritated because people who work in media who are supposed to cover concerts and live music between like Topeka and Kansas City, they'll say like, Fally, why is there no hip hop? I just lose my mind. I was like, it's all there. Like they're actually like from a business standpoint, the best people to work with because they're the ones who schedule consistent releases. They have music videos that look top notch. They send the best press releases. Like their emails are the most professional of all the music emails I get. And so it's irritating that like they think they're not there. And it's like, you're just not wanting to listen. Like this scene is going really strong and they don't need your help, you know, but you need to give them a peace of mind. Whenever there's a big festival, how many hip hop acts do you see on it? Not a lot. And it's shameful. And so that's kind of, but now it's going really strong, and I love the way it's going. But again, that's something where I came into it with not a lot of knowledge, and part of that is just me coming from another country and not having access to a lot of that and playing catch up, you know. And
so you were doing like a lot of rock music when you were younger.
Yeah, well, and like pop, and like electronic and pop music, and so because like everything we get there is very European, and so whatever the Europeans were into. That's what we were listening to. And so it was a lot of like techno. But, you know, and so it's just frustrating when people kind of, I just want people to know this exists. Like this happens and it's going really strong. Go to this. Yeah. You know, that was kind of the whole premise for why we started writing.
Oh, yeah. And on the note of like hip hop, like a couple things, like, yeah, you are right. Like the most professional emails I get are from hip hop acts, and like they always have a good link, a good little bio, and everything. And like anytime there's like a new like indie rock band that wants me to write about them, they're always like, it's just like some like sent from my iPhone email that has like 10 different typos and like sometimes a link to their music online, and I'm like, I can't do much with this. Yeah. But and also you mentioned like how prominent the hip hop scene in just the whole eastern Kansas area in general, like Kansas City, Lawrence, Topeka, is becoming more prominent because like I think Field Day Fest has like at least, and I know it kind of took like all of that I don't know what you would call it, but like a lot of people are talking about how hip-hop wasn't being included a couple of years ago, and so, I think they've probably made some pretty good strides.
Yeah, and the festival itself was like very small, and the people who started it weren't really the people who are in charge of it now. And I mean, there's some people involved still, but it's different. So when it was like one day, and then it was like 2 days with 8 bands, and sometimes it was just like whoever's available. And then like the year people really complained, I went through and this is going to sound big-headed, but like I know every musician in every band. And I went through and counted how many people of color were on the lineup, and it was like 50-50. And so it was like very even. And just because someone was a person of color doesn't mean it wasn't a hip-hop act. And so the argument was that they thought the festival was too white. But it was like, no, like there's like people who are Puerto Rican who play in psych rock bands, things like that. And but I didn't hear a lot of arguments about like, well, there's not enough hip hop. But like there is definitely like this year and the years before, the last 2 years were really good. But I think this year there's a more concentrated effort to make it spread out instead of just like, here's the hip hop showcase or here's the night where all the hip hop is, and make it so that's accessible at every venue, because they had a lot of it, but it was all in one place. And they were like, well, that's not right. We need to have that more accessible everywhere. And when we book lineups, we make sure like that's always included. And like in Lawrence, you can do that. You can book like a show with like a rock band, a hip hop act, and then like electronic or like a bluegrass. And it works. Like you can mix the genres together. And I don't know if that's something that happens a lot in KC or not. It might, but sometimes when we book shows, people are like, well, we don't really match that band. I'm like, it's okay. I think it's fine. Yeah, it'll work. It's just Lawrence, and everybody's gonna show up after 1 a.m. anyway. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
But no, yeah. You have had like showcases at Field Day Fest, like over the last 2-3 years, right? And do you have a specific iHeart Local Music showcase this year?
Yes, we do. We haven't announced it yet because we're still nailing down like a couple of big acts, and so, but we can mention like I'll mention 2 acts that are definitely on it. We have Young Machetes, who I'm just floored by. Awesome. I really like them, and then Serene Fiend is also on our showcase, and the rest will be announced later. Surprise!
Yeah, be looking out for those.
I feel like my life is just a series of announcements this summer, so it's just one announcement after the other.
Oh yeah, and I guess to backtrack a little bit though, like I said I was going to ask this, but like as you were first kind of starting the website and everything, after you kind of knew what you were doing, like what were like, did you have like a lot of like kind of early moments where like you felt like really encouraged? Like can you think of any specific like shows that went super well and like kind of like motivated you at all or stuff like that?
I really liked Scion Garage Fest. I know that's a corporate thing, and it was once, but that kind of really set the bar for like, here's how to have a festival at several venues at once across one town. And it was super. I was pregnant with my first kid during that one. And I remember I was watching Best Coast at Liberty Hall, and she pulled a little girl on stage and like played with her, and we have video of it online, and it was, and now the family has the video because they found us and asked for it. And that was like a really big moment for me because I mean, she was very young. Bethany was at that show, and I've covered her every time she's come through. And so I've seen her like grow, like from someone very young pulling kids on stage at Liberty Hall, and then like now just like full on like a woman and everything that happens in a woman's journey to adulthood, and kind of seen her go through everything. And so I've even seen her like at shows where she was like stressed out and hating everything and like taking big swigs of alcohol from a bottle and angry on stage. That was at South by. I wasn't here. And so because that's what South by does to you.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God.
No, you go down there pretty regularly.
We
right?
did. We don't anymore because we decided it was better to put all of our money into supporting musicians on the local level here.
Yeah.
What we were doing at South by was supporting musicians in front of KC crowds down there. And in return, KC was not doing a lot for Lawrence bands. Lawrence bands were coming to KC, getting paid $30 for a show. That's crap. So we were putting a lot of our money into making sure bands get paid on big shows in Lawrence, and then that way they had a lot of eyes on them. They had maybe some press out of it, depending on what kind of show it was. They had something to show for it, something to work off of. And one musician, it's not announced yet, but like one musician is getting signed to a big label because of it. And so things like that, and a lot of efforts we did. So we're keeping our dollars local. Because, I mean, we're called iHeart Local Music, so our focus is always on local stuff before bigger things. And also, it's important to keep our focuses on even touring acts to come through, because the people who put on the shows like that, it's not like, one of the big corporate companies that puts on things maybe like at Sprint Center or whatever, but like it's local companies like Mammoth and 11 Productions work really hard on throwing good shows that are memorable in Lawrence, and I wanted to keep my dollars local to keep those shows there and not lose them to other cities. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, you want bands to feel welcome when they come through and come back and all that.
And it's a shame when maybe something has the potential to be booked here and then it gets booked in another city by a corporate entity with a lot of money. We've seen this happen before, and then that show ends up having like not very good attendance, Yeah. And so it's like, whereas I think there's one promoter who like always makes home cooked meals for the bands when they come through. So like they play a good show, they get paid, they sell tickets, they play to a huge crowd, and they get a home cooked meal. Like that's the nicest thing that could happen to you on tour, I think. Yeah. And so that's kind of what I like to see. Lawrence is very much a live music mecca, and I want to see it kept that way. I was reading like this biography on Iggy Pop, and he was talking about like, Detroit in the 70s. This Detroit scene. And I just think there's no reason why Lawrence can't be talked about that way. Like, Lawrence, and during this time, like, had a recording studio at the library that was free, and like these venues were amazing, and they charged very little at the door, but bands made money and could live off of it. Like, this is my job. This is the only job I do that I put the most work into. Yeah. And so I don't do anything else. And for a lot of musicians, it's the same deal. Like, it has to go well.
And so you mentioned the Scion Fest, and like What? How did that fest really work? Like you told me.
Yeah, they had like a lot of garage acts. So it was like a garage fest, and that was when garage was kind of getting really big.
Yeah.
And so they had like King Khan and the Shriners, I think, at Bottleneck, and then they had like
burger stuff.
Yeah, it was a little before burger stuff got really big, but it was a lot of that kind of sound, and it was just wild and a lot of fun. I don't remember a lot of it.
But I'm sure there's a good blog post to go back and look at.
So I think that's when I Heard Local Music maybe was hosted on another site. And some of those sites were on for companies that have since shut down. And when I say shut down, like they sold the servers. So there's very little evidence of my work, which is really frustrating. You might be able to find it in the cache, but yeah.
But you have the last 7 years of stuff on lock right now, so it's good to have that on your own little thing.
It's going really well. I like it, and it's nice because everything's still kept very local. Like my web editor is very local, and my designer is very local, and so everything's going like keeping it super like keep my dollars local. Whenever we print merch, we do it with local companies, things like that.
Yeah, and another thing I wanted to... Oh, yeah. Okay, so this is a little bit of why you came on the show today. You have the print edition of I Heart Local Music. It's going to be quarterly magazine coming out. The first one... Do you know when the first one
So we're having a launch party June 22nd. June 22nd. And we're going to have the jackpot with C.S. Luxem Approach and the Bad Ideas. And you see what I mean by like you can have different genres on a lineup and it's just fine. And it'll come out quarterly. It is free. It is getting dispensed at venues and coffee shops downtown that are only ones that are on the Black Lives Matter solidarity list. We'll also kind of have it up at KU eventually to welcome students back to school and kind of get them more involved in music. But, for the most part, it's very much a downtown thing. And so, because that's our entertainment district. That's where we have shows. We don't have shows really anywhere else in town. This is a special occasion. So, it took a long time to put together. Yeah. And it's very necessary according to what our readers wanted. So we have things in the magazine that are not online and are special and something like physical that people can hold on to. And a lot of people are kind of drifting away from Facebook to getting very irritated with it, but they still want a calendar to look at to know what's coming up. And so that's there for them as well.
And I won't be hurt if it's not, but will it be available anywhere in Kansas City?
Eventually, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So,
just
because we do work with a lot of Kansas City bands. We profile a Kansas City act in our first issue.
Yeah. So. But I guess can you give us any idea of like some of the like exclusive stuff that'll be in the first magazine?
Well, the first issue is heavily promoting Field Day Fest. So that's kind of why we're releasing it a little late for a summer issue, because Field Day Fest is in July, and we wanted it to come out right before this. So it's coming out about a month before the festival. Yeah. So it's going to very much focus on that. So if you look at the lineup for Field Day Fest, that's the kind of stuff we're focusing on. We won't be covering anything that's not going to be in there. So that's all I can say right now.
So you'll get to hear about all the bands playing your showcase and everything.
Not yet, but we'll be focusing on like the big wigs. Yeah. So
cool. And but besides like people being irritated with Facebook and like wanting something to hold, like are there any other reasons like personally why you want to have the physical magazine?
Yeah, well, it goes back to kind of leaving something to remember you by. Like bands, they can see reviews online, but then when they see something in print, like it's something more concrete. A lot of touring acts, they only want to work with print publications, and so that's helpful as well. Even though like we reach a wider audience, so there might be an instance where like a show is coming to Lawrence. We're the Lawrence music publication, but somebody will still want to like work with a print issue in Kansas City that's not going to cover the show or do much to promote it just because it's print. And so that still means more to some people. And it also allows us to have a bigger staff and cover more. So it's not just, two people running to everything.
Yeah. And another thing I wanted to talk about was, like, I don't know, I feel like a lot of people in Kansas City, either intentionally or unintentionally, just don't just stay super up to date with what's happening in Lawrence. So, like, I know one thing that's kind of changed recently is there's new management at the Jackpot.
Yeah.
And you said you're pretty excited about that.
It's going really well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I really enjoy what's been going on there. And, like, he really understands the importance of making sure bands get paid. And so sometimes even if, like, a show happens and nobody shows up, they just pay the bands. They don't, like, take out of the door, which is usually what the bands get. They get what people pay at the door, but a lot of venues will take out of that money to pay their staff, and then they don't. So, and they're booking more shows regularly now, and they're bringing in like all the different genres, and so it's going pretty well. I like it, and we need more like venues in Lawrence because it was very limited for a little bit. So, I mean, they're all great. Nothing crappy happens, but it's nice to have more availability.
Yeah.
So.
And all the shows there are like either 18 plus or all ages.
Yeah, usually. So, and then they're like other venues, usually about $3 to get in. So. Goes really well unless it's like a special occasion. So
Are there any other big Lawrence happenings like recently that you think people should know about?
We have Pride Fest coming up. That was a really big deal to me. I had some people who are queer and work in the music scene who were really frustrated that something would be labeled a Pride night, but it was just like they'd still book straight DJs or straight talent and things like that, and it was straight people profiting. So, and like, in a couple of cases, it really hurt them. Like, it messed them up pretty bad. And so we wanted to throw an event, a 2-day festival during Pride Month, which is June, and have it completely, like, free, all ages, so it's accessible to everybody. But only queer talent were booked on it, and they got paid. And then Jackpot agreed to host it and help cover some of those expenses, and they also agreed to only have queer people working. So your sound guy, some bartenders, they're all going to be from the queer community, and that was also a big deal to make sure that really anybody who's making money off of this event is part of the queer community. And so I kind of like set it up, and then just like I'm not making any money from it, and we're actually paying some of the talent as well. And so part of the agreement also was, every second Saturday is Pride Night at the Jackpot. And, like, while my Pride Night had to deal with bands, because that's what I do, theirs is like drag. So it's like drag night. And in Lawrence, we have a really nice queer community they're active and love nightlife, but they don't get anything on a weekend. They get, like, random days, weekdays, or, like, a Sunday and things like that. And so this was something that they really wanted, was, like, a weekend where they can all party. And then, like, a lot of them work in the service industry. So, like, Saturday night, it was nice to get off work and then go do that. And so, we set it up with Miss Amanda Love, who's a drag queen in Lawrence. And then, like, stepped away from it. Like, this is all yours now. You do it. And the owner built them a catwalk. Wow. So there's going to be a catwalk coming out of the stage for the drag queens.
Oh, yeah, so it's going to be music,
with
like DJs
drag performances
and drag stuff. Yeah.
Man, that's awesome. And so, like, I'm really excited to go see how that happens, because, like, I really just am fully immersed and completely working in the music scene all the time. But when I get a night off, rarely, and I just want to do something else, like, I go to drag night. And I like that because, there's none of that where I grew up. And that's something I wanted to be supportive of, and try to see what I could do as an old straight lady to be helpful. And so it was just kind of getting the right people connected with each other, and then stepping away from it and letting it, like, saying this is their thing. I have no business in this, because like I said, I'm an old straight lady with kids and whatever. So that's really exciting. So we to kick it off, we're doing, like, the Pride event, and we book queer musicians all the time anyway. We just don't say, like, oh, look, we booked queer musicians. Like, that's just should be the norm. Yeah. Like, they're playing events all the time anyway, but just wanted to do something nice and special for them. So. And
that'll be June 8th and 9th at Jackpot?
At the Jackpot.
And who all's performing there?
We have Q, Wick and the Tricks, the Superflow. So I say Yana, but now it's Superflower. And so then also Vibrolux and Calvin Arsinia. And we're going to have drag performances from Miss Amanda Love and Micah Ann, who she also is a musician.
Yeah, she has some songs with Q.
Yeah, so she might actually appear with her during her performance, and then next night she's doing drag.
Nice.
So,
and what else was I just gonna say? Oh yeah, so that's coming up. There's the new the magazine coming out.
Yep.
Jackpot is fun right now.
Yep.
Are there any, like, okay, so you mentioned you're very excited about Young Machetes. You did, like, a whole introducing, like, Young Machetes article earlier this year. What other, like, new 2018 acts in Lawrence are you really excited about?
So, and I have trouble keeping track of some things because I had a baby last year and everything was a whirlwind. But it's not so much 2018. But like, I really like Serene Fiend. I like what he's doing. I like Elliot Fox too, another electronic musician. LK Ultra is really leaving a big impact with a lot of the Lawrence Teamsters, and it's just one of those things where I don't cover people just because they're young. I cover them when they're good. And every show is just, like, way better than the last. And so, 2 months from now, it might be even crazier and really fun. So we'll see. I don't know what their plans are because some of them, they might go to college. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
They're all in high school and met at the Girls Rock Camp. And so that's a band that people have really been just feeling lately.
Oh, yeah, like, because I remember I saw, like, one of your videos, I think, of, like, one of their first shows, like, sometime last year. I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. They're doing, like, a cool little garage rock thing. I'm like, I just didn't think much of it at the time. But then, like, I hear one of their, like, recordings that they posted on SoundCloud for, like, the Farmer's Ball. Like, they posted all, like, songs from all the bands playing that. And I'm like, wow, they got even better. And I was like, man, and I've, like, asked them to play a couple of Kansas City shows since then, and I've found out, like, oh, yeah, none of us can drive yet, so maybe another time, but we cannot get a ride to Kansas City that night. So hopefully we'll all get to see them soon, but I think people should definitely try to get to Lawrence and catch that band.
And that at Field Day Fest, that's going to be the show where everybody really that's the one they really want to see.
Yeah.
So that's a big deal to a lot of people. I'm trying to think what else people were excited for in Field Day Fest. Actually, no, we talk about it in the magazine, so you'll just have to wait till it comes out.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's most of what I wanted to get to, but we'll definitely have to, bring you back every once in a while, get a fun little Lawrence update, and maybe just dig up some different, like, early stuff every time and look back.
I cover so many shows that sometimes it's hard for me to remember, and so what happened in those first years.
Yeah. And you could ask me, like, what I'm seeing next week, and I'll have, like, no idea because I'm like, okay, let me check my calendar. I have no clue.
It's a ton of stuff all the time.
Yeah.
That's okay. Exciting world of music journalism.
Yeah.
But I'd really like people to come and check out Field Day Fest. Like, Middle of the Map Fest is a really great local music festival. There are 2 Lawrence acts on there this year, and I think sometimes people think they're from KC. So Lawrence does not have a presence in Middle of the Map Fest. We're actually not covering it this year because there aren't any bands from our community going up there. There's a couple, but there are 2 we cover all the time. And so Field Day Fest is a really good way to get a snapshot of what's going on. And they've kind of expanded. So they have not just bands from, like, the neighboring cities like St. Joe and Manhattan and whatever. They're actually kind of got bands from other states coming in as well, which is a really big deal. And so people have been kind of limiting their shows to make sure for this. And festivals are where you get to see bands do something special. Like, you can see the same band give, like, really great shows every time, but festivals are where crazy shit happens. Somebody on one of our showcases is going to light something on fire. So, I can't say much.
If that's
yet.
Any incentive
It'll be
for
fine.
the pyromaniacs out there.
It'll be fine. Nothing's going to catch on fire. We'll survive. It'll be fine. Don't worry about it. That's what I keep telling you.
Fally will have a fire extinguisher at the ready. So people can make sure to follow at Shuttlecock Mag on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Check out shuttlecockmag.bigcartel.com for t-shirts, photozines, and buttons. And check our Facebook page for the shows we're hosting coming up. Where can people find your work online and everything? Where can they find it?
iHeartLocalMusic.com. You have to spell it out, the whole thing. You have to say the whole thing like A Tribe Called Quest. You have to say iHeartLocalMusic.com. And on Instagram, it's iHeartLocalMusic. On Twitter, it's just heart local music. So
someone beat you to it.
they just back then you couldn't have that many letters.
Okay.
So, this was a long time ago. So, but and then we'll also be in magazines throughout the Lawrence area, downtown, and eventually in KC. But for now, you'll have to come to Lawrence.
Well, awesome. I appreciate you coming by to be on the show today.
We appreciate you covering shows and having us out.
Awesome.